The CRTC went and they said, even if you criticize the government, we're not going to censor you. Like hell you're not, bro. Come on. This podcast already got censored. No, first of all, I want to say that I think James Topp is a Canadian hero. It's what he is. He stood up against the machine. Is that it looks like it is going to be a conservative majority based on where things are at today. And I think the only chance the Liberals have to stop that from happening is if they get rid of Trudeau.
Right now, consumer debt is a ticking time bomb. About 43% of Canadians are in heavy credit card debt, with 11% of them being not sure of how they're gonna pay it off. And similar thing for America. Actually, in America, it's a little bit worse. 61%, 3 in 5 over there are in heavy credit card debt.
All the way down the steps, the economy's in a bad position. Hey everybody, welcome to the BLENDR Report, where news meets rational thinking. I'm your host, Jonathan Harvey, and this is your co-host, Aaron Cole.
What's up, everybody?
If you have a moment, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. There will be new videos out every week. And if you really love what we're putting out, leave us a comment, tell us what you think. We'd love to hear from you. All right, let's get into it.
So on to the next headline. So for headline number 1, we have social media creators, podcasters, and won't be regulated under the new liberal online streaming law. This is based on a CBC article, and within this article, it states that the CRTC previously said companies making more than $10 million annually would have to register. The Liberal government has released its final policy direction on the Online Streaming Act, which requires digital giants to contribute to the Canadian content while leaving individual content creators alone. The controversial legislation aims to modernize Canada's broadcasting regime. Canadian content has benefited from billions of dollars contributed by the broadcasting on TV, radio, cable, and satellite. But Canadians are increasingly consuming their content online. On Tuesday, the Department of Canadian Heritage issued its final direction to the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission, also known as the CRTC, on the legislation in order to scope in streaming services such as Netflix, Amazon Prime Video, YouTube, and Apple, because they broadcast commercial content as well. So this pretty much marks the end of the government's direct role with the law formerly known as Bill C-18 and the Liberal government's second attempt to bring major online streaming services in Canada's broadcasting system, and will eventually have them contribute to local music and stores. So what are your thoughts on this, Jonathan?
It's a wolf dressed up in sheep's clothing. That's what this is, right? Oof. So what they're saying is objectively false. So everybody will be regulated on these platforms. They're saying no content creators and no podcasters will be regulated, but every one of them will be by proxy. So here's how this is going to work. There's two things to point out. First thing that these people said was they go, look, if you make restaurant reviews or dance videos or makeup tutorials, you're never going to be censored. That's insane. Except the CRTC's mission here is to prioritize Canadian content, right? And they want to prioritize Indigenous content, French content, and people from marginalized, equitable, all that other stuff. That's their priority, right? Mm-hmm. So how can you do that if you don't replace other content? You're not going to watch 2 screens at once. You're only going to watch one thing. So the only way that they can do this, and this is what I call soft censorship. I just made this shit up. So I know. So this is what I kind of call soft censorship, where they take things that don't necessarily need to be censored, like restaurant reviews or makeup tutorials or whatever it is, and they censor them in the sense that they replace it with this other equitable content, right? So this is going to happen no matter what. Even though they're saying no, that's exactly how it's going to happen, because they are in control of what these companies can broadcast. And what these companies broadcast is your content. So first, it's objectively false in that way. The next thing, the CRTC went and they said, even if you criticize the government, we're not going to censor you. Like hell you're not, bro. Come on. This podcast already got censored. Again,
on day 1.
Yeah, dude, I was actually impressed. That is like an accolade. Like, that's a trophy for me. Censored on Spotify, day 1. But here's why that is also objectively false. Because what happens is they have set up a rule where, and this comes from the government, where if anybody complains, if there is a complaint about a piece of content, say a Joe Rogan podcast or maybe the BLENDR Report, if there is a complaint made to the CRTC, they then investigate the complaint, whether it's illegal content or not. And they were very specific about saying that. So someone complains about me calling them a blue-haired freak in the last episode, and they go complain. CRTC goes, oh yeah, that's harmful. That's hateful. Oh yeah. Because the liberals are the ones that are creating this filter with which they're viewing this through. Yeah. So as soon as they deem that it's a threat, what they do is they go to the proxy site. They go to Spotify, they go to Instagram, they go to Facebook, and they go, you need to censor this content. This can't be up here because it's hateful and there was complaints about it. So you're right. They're not going to go, hey, Jonathan, you're getting censored directly. They're going to go to the companies that allow us to distribute our content, and they're going to censor us that way. That's exactly how this is going to happen. And I'm telling you, when they implement that hate speech bill, C-36, this gets astronomically worse, because then these social media companies are now going to have a filter that they have to basically view content through. So now it won't even come to a complaint. Now it won't be some blue-haired freak going and complaining about my video. It'll just be, well, Jonathan mentioned, say, Israel-Palestine. He mentioned vaccines. He mentioned, I don't know, Joe Rogan. He mentioned a litany of things that they now deem hate speech because it doesn't vibe with their narrative. Now I'm already filtered right away. So these things, this is a heavy-handed censorship bill. And by the government saying, our hands are off of it now. Sorry, the CRTC is a government organization. What do you mean your hands are off of it? What you did was you passed it to your little brother and gave him a set of rules to totally fuck this country with. That's exactly what you did. So, objectively false.
Yeah, that's the interesting part. And you know what's another thing, what's also interesting, is how does this affect Canadians outside of Canada, right? Because what is effectively Canadian content at the end of the day? What if it's a show that just so happens to have a Canadian producer or a Canadian behind the scenes making I don't know, maybe they're the sound boom guy or whatever in a TV show that's on Netflix and stuff like that, or maybe it's just a script writer. Like, what effectively is Canadian content at the end of the
parameters?
Day? And so what are the parameters? I think that's one of my biggest concerns as well too. And I just think that like this it had no reason to be even proposed, but we all know why it was proposed. Is because the internet is where the truth is being shown everywhere, and Justin wants to control the narrative, and he just can't anymore.
Well, I mean, you're 100% right. That's actually a good question, and I have an answer for you. So I don't know about every parameter they're going to use.
Yeah,
but I know at scale there is a portion of this bill that says all these companies that have to register with the CRTC that make over $10 million a year in revenue, all of these companies now have to contribute money to a fund. It's a government-controlled fund. And through this fund, they will create content. So you're right, I'm not kidding.
So it's taxes on taxes.
Yeah, but here's what's worse about this. So you're going to be these companies, these social media companies, big tech, Netflix, all these people, they're going to be contributing to a fund where they have to basically, give up money that they're making. Yeah, they're getting taxed on taxes, and that's fine. But it's going into a fund that is going to just be making Canadian content, but it's going to be regulated by the government. So you're basically funding state-sponsored content.
Oh, so we're just paying for CBC.
Yeah, well, that's exactly. So, but the thing is, it's not even us. So it's these big social media companies.
Yeah.
It's these companies that are now, they have to pitch into this fund. So once they're regulated by the CRTC, they have to throw an X amount of dollars into this fund, and then state-controlled media will be produced. And I guarantee you, all of that shit is going to be the stuff that is going to be prioritized. And amongst other things, for sure. But that's part of it.
Yeah, and that's going to be interesting how not only will that be prioritized, but I'm waiting to see how this affects like algorithms in terms of like your YouTube algorithm. Is it going to change how YouTube recommends content? Because like, YouTube does it in a way that's already perfect, right? It just does it based off of your interests. What are you already watching? What are you liking? What are you commenting on? So is it just going to completely take over your home feed, or is it going to be like a section? You know how like, a lot of the social media apps are doing it now. You know how you have your For You sections and then your following sections?
Yeah.
Is it going to be like Canada section and then normal section? Like, how is this going to really play out? Like, what do you think about that? Like, how do you see it rolling out?
Well, there's actually, there's some good news here, guys. I have some actual good news about this. First of all, if they were to apply this, it would take such a long time because, first of all, the government moves so incredibly slow. All bureaucracy, all red tape. So applying things like this take a long time. But if it ever did get to the point that it was on these social platforms, that's probably what a lot of them would do. So like someone like YouTube or Meta or whatever, they'd probably create like a Canadian section, because that would give the illusion that they were sort of following the rules. That's what I would do if I were YouTube. That's how I would handle it. But to be honest with you, I don't even think it's going to get to that point, and here's why. Ever since this got passed over to the CRTC, what the CRTC said was, we now have to spend, by their own admission, years doing consultations. They have to years. So they're going to spend our tax dollars on this.
So government workers are going to actually do work?
No. They're going to hire more. They're going to hire more consultants to review. So they're going to go through all this stuff.
My goodness.
So they're going to go through all. But they're going to. This is actually to our benefit. They're going to, in a way, we're paying them. We're paying for it, which sucks. But the reality is the outcome is positive. So they're going to be going through these consultations with all these indigenous groups, all these the equity, the diversity, all these marginalized groups. So they're going through this stuff. And they want to identify kind of what you said was what is exactly what parameters do they want to use for Canadian content? How can these groups be best represented? And then what they have to do, which they also admitted would take a lot of time, is decide which companies actually fall under the umbrella of having to be altered based on their content and how everything's sort of being applied within the technical side. Yeah. So by their own admission, this is a 2 to 3 year process from now until it's actually applied. But here's the actual valuable part in that. What this is doing is buying us time, right? So the Liberal government admitted right now they're going to take 2 to 3 years to put this into the market, right? The conservative government rather came out at the same time that this article went live and said, as soon as we're in power, we are repealing this. It's 100% bullshit.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance that if Canadians get their shit together and vote for a majority conservative government right now. And I don't think conservatives always the answer, but right now it really is. But if they do, one of their campaign promises is that they are repealing Bill C-11. So if the Liberal government, trust people to do what they do, if the Liberal government does take 2 to 3 years to get this into the market, then there's a good chance it dies before it ever gets any air. So it may actually never even be applied. So, we're complaining about it and going back and forth about it, and it is heavy-handed censorship and all that other stuff. But as it stands right now, if the government changes hands in 2025, we may never see this come to life. At least not until the Liberals are back in power, whenever that may be.
Yeah, and that would be interesting. And just to kind of like touch on that point, you were mentioning how a lot of people are really heavily leaning conservative. Recently, there was a rally that Pierre held in. I think it was like a small town in BC or something like that. He held it I believe yesterday or the day before. And this is like a super strong NDP riding. And he had one of the biggest turnouts at that event. And ironically enough, it's become a big discussion, more so earlier today and everything like that going on, where they were talking about if the election were to happen, there would be a supermajority. And I think it was about the report was saying also I'm getting this from City News. They were saying about 60% if the Conservatives were to have an election today, 60% of the seats would be Conservative seats.
Right. So
it would be pretty well. That would be one of the largest supermajorities, I think they said, since 1993, since Jean Chrétien's liberal government back then. So if it does happen, the Conservatives are going to have a lot of power in their sense to take action on things like this. So me personally, I'm not too sure how much of their word they're going to keep, but if they can just deliver on 25% of the things that they say they're going to deliver on, like this, for example, hopefully CBDCs, I don't know.
Yeah, I think
vaccine
there's a lot
mandates, but I'm not going to hold my head, I'm not going to hold them too high and say I expect 100% or less, because, it's still politics at the end of the day.
They're still negotiating, they're still bargaining, there's still different. You don't come in and get to rule with an iron fist. You still have to worry about the Senate, and you have to worry about the House and all that other stuff, and you got to worry about what you're giving up to get what you need. But like you said, the positive news in all of this is that it looks like it is going to be a Conservative majority based on where things are at today. And I think the only chance the Liberals have to stop that from happening is if they get rid of Trudeau, which may, in a sense, really get rid of that guard of Liberal.
Yeah.
So I hope. I don't know. I don't know how polluted or how poisoned that party currently is and what's going on within that administration. Sometimes you take something out and the whole dynamic changes. Yeah. And maybe that's the case. but maybe it's not, and maybe they end up being the same way, whatever. But, like I said, I'm not through and through any one side in politics, but right now the conservative government is just the right thing to do to correct course for this country.
For sure. Yep. Well, if they do go through, they're going to have a lot to clean up. A lot. But that being said, time to move on to the next headline for today. So for headline number 2, we have 100 Vancouver police sent to protect Trudeau after protests surrounds the restaurant. So the good news about the internet is that video exists. So why don't we let's go ahead and take a look at this together.
Oh, guys getting yelled at in the restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's not just outside the restaurant. They're like, fuck this guy.
No, yeah. They apparently they tore down the barricades and went in the restaurant.
Yo, dude, no one cares about you. No one likes you. Thing is, he's trying to, like, save face or whatever. People are like, we don't want any of this.
My gosh. And you know what's funny?
Yo, honestly, bro, it's good to see Canadians getting up on their horse about some shit. Let's go.
Look at that. They're active on him.
Wow. No. How did this guy not vet the place properly? Yo, if you go to this area of town, no one. It's like the Bloods and the Crips. He just rolls right into enemy territory. Like, bro, what are you thinking? You didn't even have backup. You had to call in 100 police officers.
100.
Bruh.
But yeah, let's go ahead. I'm going to pause this for now. But man, like, it's literally like you said, like I really think, but you know what's the thing as well, what I don't think he took into consideration? I think he just... Well, maybe he is that oblivious.
He's narcissistic.
Like, I think he is that oblivious, like, because maybe he thought it was like Vancouver's a very liberal place. Like, I'm always loved in these type of environments. So maybe he just thought like, hey, like just another day I could always pull up like that.
Bro, everywhere this guy goes, he's getting shit. Always. Everywhere he goes, someone's trying to throw something at him or yell at him or give him trouble. Like, that's just the way this guy's life is going now.
And you know what makes it even funny enough? Like, you know what makes it even funnier? 2 days ago, he tried to because, he came out in support of Israel at the beginning, right? And obviously that, if you take one side or the other, like, you get backlash from whichever side.
Sure.
And originally he was getting so much backlash from obviously from Palestinian supporters and everything like that, right? And he noticed that like if you actually take a look at like the polling, like mind you, the NDP is gaining in votes, and a good chunk of the NDP supporters are they support Israel-Palestine issues in that regard. Like, yes, there's still some people who support Israel in that scenario, but in their camp specifically,
yeah, it's becoming more politicized. It's becoming more grouped by political association. Yes.
Yes. And that's what's ironically happening, right? And in that scenario, so in order to kind of like make a poll-related move, it seems like he wanted to just support Palestine. So he came out and he tried his best to ask for a ceasefire from Netanyahu without actually saying the word ceasefire. He said, you must proceed as, he said basically something, it was just the weirdest thing ever. He basically asked to proceed with caution or something like that, like the quote was. So he was basically telling him to be careful. There's still human lives. And he came out and said, like, we must protect the innocent Palestinians and everything like that. For sure. So then Netanyahu actually ended up and blasted him on Twitter and completely blasted though. And then a Jewish community in Canada, like similar to like the ADL, I'm assuming in America, they went out, blasted him on Twitter as well too. So then he's just getting shots from both communities, because now even the people he's trying to pander to are just telling him like, bro, fuck off. Like, we don't care what you have to say. Like, you already said what you had to say first. Like, don't switch up now. Like,
he's pissed off both sides.
And he's pissed off both sides.
It's funny actually. So one of the things he did too, once he got, I don't know if it was when he was in Vancouver or when he went down for the APEC summit in San Francisco, but he also said, he said that Iran is 100% complicit in the attack on October 7th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Even the United States wouldn't admit that. They're like, we don't have any intel to guarantee that they were involved in it. So he's the only other person in the world other than Israel that's like, Iran did this. And then I think right away he went, oh, fuck, what did I just do? So they start asking him questions like, well, you have this Islamic revolutionary group tied to Iran and Canada. There's these people running around free. Like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Are you going to list them as a terror organization? He's like, oh, and then he just gave them some bullshit answer. Then they're like, yes or no. He dodged the question, wouldn't answer them. So it's funny. And then Netanyahu, like for him to go at him online just shows how weak Trudeau is, right?
Oh yeah, no one likes him.
No,
no one.
So he's actually pissed off both sides in like the last day or two. He's right in the middle of this and he's made everybody angry. And I mean, that again just goes to show why this guy is he's a fledgling politician. He's young and inexperienced in the game. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He doesn't really seem to have any like moral compass. He doesn't really seem to have any like solid direction. He's just like you said, he's kind of going with the flow of the polls and being like, how can I fix this? How can I fix this? And he just keeps putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg and this guy's just slowly falling apart, which is exactly what you see when 250, you know what's funny? So I was thinking about this. 250 people rallied at that restaurant at 10 p.m. at night.
That's crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Some people call me a grandpa for this, but I'm inside at 10 p.m.
Bro, if I wasn't doing the news this late right now, I used to be in bed at about 9:30 on a Friday. Now I'm up super late doing the news. It's driving me insane. But like, dude, so this is on like a Tuesday. Yeah. These people are like at the drop of a hat, 250 people. Like, doesn't that tell you how much they despise this man? Because I'm not getting. Look, of all the people I know, I think I might dislike him the most. Seriously.
No,
and I say that, you know, but if someone's like, hey, it's 10 o'clock and Trudeau's down the street even if he was at my restaurant, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, someone throw an egg at him. I got shit to do. I wouldn't even get up and go, but this many people got up just to go give this guy shit. And I think like that really tells you where the country's at and how they feel about this man. And
oh yeah. And it's always a crazy day when obviously funny enough, in certain places, like politicians don't need that much security because, they're relatively loved. Like, let's look at what's his name? I think his name, the El Salvadorian president and everything like that. Like,
Malay maybe his name. I may butcher that. The guy that's trying to jump in now. That's kind of like this.
He's like, it's something with the N. El Salvador. I don't want to chop his name up. El Salvadorian president.
Oh no, yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Nayib Bukele. Yes, him.
I had a different.
If you compare like someone like him to like Trudeau,
yeah, I was thinking of Argentina. Sorry,
polar opposites.
Yeah,
like complete. Like this guy goes places. People are like Bukele, chanting his name. They're shaking his hand. They're giving him hugs. You know what I mean? Because like he's like completely turned around like El Salvador in the time that he's been there. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the funniest part is, he's actually close to Trudeau in age.
Right.
So it's just like, it goes to show you that even if you're, young and inexperienced, you can lean on the wisdom of advisors, and by being more of a action-oriented person and being real and connecting with people and what truly, the thing, and being concerned with the things that truly affect your citizens, instead of looking on Twitter and looking at polls to determine what you're gonna fight for and what values you're gonna fight for. He does what's right, and for his country.
I agree. I think at the end of the day, like every politician at one time in their life is fledgling, the young and inexperienced. That's what it is, and it's more about being young and inexperienced in your field, not necessarily your age. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that everybody's in that role at one time or another. It's just a matter of, do they get the help they need? Do they heed the advice? But he doesn't. So he's a narcissistic egomaniac. So he already thinks he's got all the answers. You ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Oh, yeah.
So that's when you think you know more about something than you do, so you act with this undeserved sense of confidence. That is Trudeau down to a T. That is that man.
He's Exhibit A.
Yeah, exactly. So he does these things thinking, oh, everybody loves me or this or that or whatever. I'm going to get away with this because everyone else is stupid and I'm so brilliant. It's sociopathic. And I'm happy to see that the country is pissed off enough to join him for dinner at 10 p.m. just to give him a piece of their mind.
Yeah, thank you. Shout out to Vancouver for that.
Shout out to the people.
Shout out to the people. Thank you guys for doing that. Well, let's move on to the next news story for today. So for the next headline, we have headline number 3. Nepal bans TikTok, saying it disrupts social harmony. So this is actually from a NBC article. And in this article, it says that it wasn't clear what triggered the ban or whether TikTok had refused to comply with Nepal's request. But the Nepal's government decided to ban the popular social media app TikTok on Monday, saying it was disrupting social harmony in the country. The announcement was made following a cabinet meeting. Foreign Minister Narayan Prakash Saud, Narayan Prakash Saud said that the app would be banned immediately. The government has decided to ban TikTok as it was necessary to regulate the use of social media the social media platform that was disrupting social harmony, goodwill, and flow of indecent materials, Saud said. He said that to make social media platforms accountable, the government has asked to comply to register and open a liaison office in Nepal, paying taxes and abide by the country's laws and regulations. So, Jonathan, what do you think about this?
I think it's good that they're actually being reasonable enough to say, hey, if you open an office here and you follow our rules, you're welcome. You can join us, which I think is good because a lot of times it's just blanket, see you later, like in India. And then like India just blanketed TikTok, like, nope, you can't come in. Now people will use VPNs and whatever to try to work their way around it. But the reality is they're just like, nope, we don't want your business. The United States started banning it, obviously on all their federal devices. Same thing in Canada, but also the state of Montana, oddly enough, banned. And now they're looking at maybe sort of expanding that. Now, here's the reality around that is all social media to some degree is bad for social harmony. It's bad for your mental state. Here's what I think happens when you get into social media, especially when you're younger. You get onto this platform and you create this profile of who you want to be. Yes, it's who you are, but you're really only showing people in the world the highlight reel of who you are, right?
Yeah.
You'll take the same photo, like we talked about this earlier, you, me, and Dean going like, hey, we don't really take selfies and blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, I'm 38. I don't know how to take a selfie. I look like an asshole. Like, it's just not a part of my generation. You know what I mean? So, but the kids that are growing up that are closer to your age or younger, they'll take 100 photos, then they'll get just the right one. That's the one that goes up. That's the one that identifies who they are, that everyone likes and engages with. And imagine that people don't engage with it and don't like it. Now, how do you feel about yourself? Not very good. That's tough. But I'll take it even further. Let's say that you find the rhythm and you get better at this and you grow and you have people that like you and they continually say, hey, we love this version of you with all these likes and all these shares and all these comments. We really want to be a part of your life. Now you've created this highlight reel of your life online. So what that does is creates this weird psychological duality where you have an online person and then you have the real person. Look, if you ever watch my videos online, those are the highlight reels. In fact, if you watch the next podcast that comes out today, that was the highlight reel because I stopped several times. People don't see those things.
Yeah.
The real version of me, I try to be as honest and real as possible, but you get the edited version online. So it creates this idea that like you're this perfect sort of version of yourself when you're not. So what happens is when these young minds that don't even have the strength and stability that mine has at this age, which is still a little wonky sometimes, when they have to try to step into the real world, they're afraid to. So now they're going to be completely introverted because they can't live up to this thing they created online. There's no way that they can live up to the highlight reel. So they develop a myriad of mental disorders. And I feel really bad. And it's this weird period in time where we're going through this transition of just understanding how damaging social media can be. And from what I understand, and I don't understand it too deeply, but from what I understand, TikTok has been the worst of the bunch. It has made things substantially worse for a lot of people. Maybe because it's prioritizing younger people getting more fame early on. Maybe because you have the opportunity to go more viral just randomly on the platform. I don't know enough about why. Maybe it's the short form video format. For whatever reason it is. But the thing is, they're also doing all these weird challenges that are putting kids in danger and doing stupid shit. And, it's also, polluting a lot of the young minds into this sort of weird ideology and whatever. So the platform itself, I believe, may be the biggest problem within one of the biggest problems we have for today's youth. So I understand why countries are starting to ban these things. Now, when it comes to TikTok specifically, outside of maybe its ability to do the most damage, there's also this big concern about it's a CCP controlled app, right? It's controlled by China. And what most people know is all business in China, in one way or another, once you get to a certain size, you're basically married to the government. You essentially have a government official working in there, and they play a game that no one else in the world can play, and it's actually pretty impressive. Here's why. We play a game of capitalism, right? You have your business, I have mine.
Yeah.
You sell t-shirts, I'm a distribution company. You know, at the end of the day, all you worry about is selling t-shirts, and all I worry about is distributing, right? So we have a very, very narrow focus. We know what we do, right? But what happens is in China, they have all of the companies under their umbrella that are worth anything, right? And then what they do is they play a game of chess with the rest of the world. So even though you might say, well, I'd like to sell my t-shirts to this guy, they go, no. You're going to actually start producing pants and you're going to sell them to these guys. And I'm like, well, I like to distribute this stuff. They're like, you're not distributing that anymore. You're going to distribute this over here. Yeah. Because they are playing a game of chess with all these massive companies, and they are basically playing it against the world, and the world is at a disadvantage because they don't play the game the same way. I don't agree with what they're doing necessarily because they have their hands in capitalism. They have their hands in these businesses, and all these fucking people end up disappearing all the time when their companies fail, which is really strange to me. That's a whole other conversation, sorry. But when you look at it like that, that is the game they're playing, and all these other politicians globally, they know what China's capable of doing with this. So when they get access to all of the information that's on TikTok, essentially, they have the world's data at their fingertips. Yeah. Now, I'm too stupid to understand what they can do with it, but when I put those two scenarios together, I can see a real problem because the world now, like the most valuable asset in the world is data. So if you're giving China control of all of the data, when they run their economic system in like a game of chess while the rest of us are playing fucking checkers, you know that they're going to have a major advantage because they have access to it. So the apprehension to keep giving them this information, it really does add up.
Yeah, it definitely adds up. But one thing I noticed, which is kind of happening at an alarming rate, is that governments are increasingly like all trying to like tax social media companies or like control the narrative in a certain way. Like they wanted to basically have like coerce TikTok to stay by, hey, you have to pay some government fee to operate here. Like, you know, what's different with that from like Bill C-11 or stuff like that, right? So I'm not like a super TikTok supporter. I'm just looking at it more in the sense of like, hey, there's some similarities. Like maybe it's not to the same degree in aggression that Bill C-11 is on, but everyone seems to be taking this weird angle of, hey, we got to strong arm you or ban you to with these platforms. And it's interesting to see it develop. Like, you know, what do you think about that?
I think there's three things to consider there. First, that it's all these social media companies to some degree are causing the problem with today's youth and the rest of the world. Yeah. But the thing is, a lot of them, I think pretty much all of them, the large majority of the big ones are all American. So America doesn't care about that because they have access to the data and no one else does. So that's number one. That's part of it. The second one about taxing these companies, well, look, the government, bro, they're a vampire that feed on blood. When they see it in the water, they want to they want some. That is what it is, man. I guess I could have called them sharks. I don't know. They're vampire sharks. Fuck off. So anyway, my point is these companies are making so much money hand over fist. Like, we want a piece of that. So they want to implement ways because they're digital companies, right? It's kind of a new space for the world, you know, where you can operate from different parts in the world and have a big base in, say, Canada or the United States, but you're not stationed there. So are your taxes really due? So they're just basically like, oh, you're loopholing out of paying taxes, and we want your taxes because we want to pay ourselves more. It's for the people, but we want the money. So I see that anyway. That's just how the government operates.
That's true. That's very true.
That's a big part of it, too. And then the third thing really is about censorship. The medium of social media itself is outside the control of the government right now. And they are really trying to get a handle on it because they're losing control of their narratives across the board, across the world, right? So they control anything in the news. They control anything on the radio. They control anything in mainstream media. They have control over, you know, your movie studios, a lot of other things. They do. They have their hands on a lot of this stuff to dictate what the world is told. Because like I've said before, media is the number one weapon of the government. But social media, they're having a really, really hard time controlling it. So now they're starting to implement these rules and these taxes and all this other stuff just to try to get a handle on it so they can get control of the narrative again. Because if they can, then they're going to have a weapon that's more powerful than they've ever had in their lives. Because social media does reach... Think about how quickly it reaches us, right? Social media reaches the world in a split second. But the whole world... There's been no other tool like that. It'd be local news. It'd be, you know, a movie in this language or that. Now they've got all these apps, you know what I mean? And you've seen all these things where they'll just translate things immediately. I can hear myself in Italian speaking very fluently, and I'm like, that's wild. But you look at that and you're like, my message can get to the world in a split second. They can't have that. So they're just going to slowly try to figure out how to wedge themselves in between this and then get control of it and then add that under the same umbrella as like the mainstream media over time. So we're just sort of seeing that happen slowly.
Yeah, we're definitely going to see a shift. And just to touch on the point about like, TikTok and youth and, what kind of led to that is like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but like TikTok, out of like all of the platforms, one of the things that they did really well, for their business, maybe not for society, but for their business, I like to call so all social media can be bad, but TikTok, in my personal opinion, is digital opium. Like it is,
right.
It is like, if Instagram is weed and YouTube is, I don't know, alcohol for some, you know what I mean? TikTok,
the gateway drug.
Yep, yeah, it definitely is, man. The gateway, alcohol.
Yeah.
TikTok is what's that crazy one that's the destroying fentanyl? Oh. TikTok is digital fentanyl, in my opinion.
That's wild.
And the reason why I say that is because the messages that are being pushed to the youth, like I've literally tested this on my personal TikTok before. Yeah. When you first join up, like, I don't know about for me, because I joined it, and as an experiment, I said I was a boy. I said I was like a 18-year-old boy. Okay. And then the second one, I said I was an 18-year-old girl. Right. Or whatever, right? The 18-year-old boy type content, I was being flooded with e-thoughts. You know what I mean? And what I mean by e-thoughts, like promiscuous women, OnlyFans, OnlyFans girl.
This woman is in your area and she wants to date you. She doesn't know what I look like, bro.
That type of stuff. I would be seeing girls twerking, thirst traps, them like shaking their titties on screen. Yeah, I would see degenerate just fights or degenerate. Oh, you're not a real man if you do this. Like this red pill propaganda.
Yo, that's crazy.
Like, you know what I mean? Oh, F bitches get money type stuff. And then after the girl one, it's just like, here's what I did. I got this BBL. Check out my new wardrobe. This is what I got. And just like, this is how all of my fits are. And like, all the prototypical, stereotypical stuff show to this demographic. And think about it like this. Not only are you constantly seeing those messages, because think about like the people, although the content at first was only 15 seconds, people on average were spending like 1.5 to like 2 hours.
That's
just
wild.
Scrolling.
I haven't been on TikTok for 2 hours cumulatively in my entire life.
It's crazy, man. My personal daily limit, like I literally set a daily limit for it.
That's why you're on the fentanyl.
I was on the fentanyl before. Like the pandemic, I was on the fentanyl. I was like, I need some more of that.
I post and I'm gone. Don't read comments. Don't check anything. Just whoop. I'll open it up back at like 3 days. I'm like, let's see how it went. Like
legit, and that's how I am now. Ever since I put myself on the 15-minute timer. Yeah. I put 15 minutes.
That's so funny.
Yeah, that's enough. That's enough to post something. Maybe record something.
Yeah.
That's it.
Sure.
That's it. And then if I repress like, remind me in 15 minutes, then I'm like, okay, no, you're being a crackhead.
Yeah,
like,
it's your snooze button, bro. Get out of here.
Let's go.
Get up. You got shit to do. You know what's interesting? So this is it's kind of in line with what you're saying, and there's not a lot of basis for this, but it's just like something I've heard or understood to be the case, that TikTok is sort of like a psyop from China. So if you look at how TikTok's run in China, there's a lot of educational material for their kids. And
sciences.
And there's a limited amount of time they can be on there. So they use it as a tool to educate their kids, because that's actually a valuable use of these tools, of social media. They're like, hey, and there is a lot of really intelligent people on these platforms.
But they don't get any views.
I think what I wanted to do is I wanted to give it a little credit, and some people a little credit by saying that. But in China, they push that content on these kids. So they learn more and do more. And that's a value add. But from what the PSYOP part is, and this is why I think people have such a problem with it being a China-controlled app, is that China's specifically doing this to other countries where they give them the content that you were seeing to try to ruin the country from the adolescent age, get into their mind, convince them that these are the right things to believe in. This is what you need to worry about. They get them into a more animalistic part of their brain with what you just said, with fighting and titties all day. Like, bro, all you're going to feel is adrenaline with a heart on. Like, that's your whole day if you're 18 and that's what you're
getting. They're trying to take them straight to the porn apps.
Yeah, like that's wild, dude. That stuff is I am so glad I used a Sears magazine when I was a kid and did not have access to fucking Pornhub. That is insane. Anyway, so like, if that's the case, and it seems to be like if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that seems to be, so I don't really have any proof that it's a psyop, but when you kind of look at how it operates in these other countries versus what they do in China, it certainly seems that way.
Oh yeah, I believe it. Like there was, just to bring up that psyop point, there was like a video that was going viral like a couple of months ago, and pretty much in that video, after it was analyzed, it was found out to be basically it was a person in China that was basically creating content to to basically be anti-marriage. So like they would show like a person, it would show like what would happen. Like they would have like a wedding ring, and then they would put the wedding ring on, and then the girl would just see herself doing chores. So she'll put the wedding ring on, and then she's like doing dishes, and then she'll take it off and back to normal. Then she'll put it on, folding bare laundry, and she's like stressing out, and then she'll take it off, back to normal, and then she'll put it back on. The husband's in the corner doing nothing, and then she's just like stressing, trying to make meals and balance all the type of stuff. Like just the prototypical.
Bro, they're trying to break down the
shit.
family unit.
Like,
they're trying to break down the family unit. That kind of shit, exactly. That kind of shit is wild.
That went mad viral, and then all of the young, a ton of people across the net, you would just see the think pieces, and they wouldn't even realize that this is propaganda. They were trying to say it was in America, but if you look at like the closely on the wall, you see Chinese, you see Mandarin writing, you see certain types of pipes and drainage that's only in China and stuff like that, and it's just like. But you could tell like the person was like using a filter to make themselves look like a white person, like a European. So they were trying to make it seem like it was like a Western person.
But that just makes it seem so much more set up. Like the attack is just on America or Canada or whoever the fuck else it's going to be.
Yeah.
Something actually just came out of CNN. CNN reported on, I'm not sure whose report it was, that China's got the largest disinformation. I use that word loosely because I think it's misused a lot. But what they do is they basically got the largest group of people that go and do cyber attacks. And they're like, we have this documented, whatever. And actually,
maybe that's what happened to us a while back.
So like Meta has knocked down a ton of these groups. Spamiflage, I think the other one's called Dragon Bridge or something like that. The other one, the Dragon Bridge, is kind of a cool name. Anyway, so what these groups do is at scale, if there's any dissent against China, whether you're American, Canadian, Chinese, doesn't matter, they at scale come at you online. And like they're trying to get people to commit suicide, they're shutting down people's businesses, they're talking a bunch of shit about them. And the thing is, they say, even though these accounts get shut down, the Chinese are doing it at such scale, and it's such an inexpensive thing to do that they're setting up accounts faster than the other ones are getting shut down. So it's like this cat and mouse game, but they continue the attack, and they've gotten outside. Now, recently they said they've gotten outside of just attacking people for Chinese descent. Now they're trying to shape global policy and global views on certain things by using this group of people because they realize how powerful this weapon has become. So just when you sort of tie it all up, you're like, yeah, okay, I understand why they're starting to ban TikTok. I guess it adds up.
Yeah, it adds up, and it also makes sense why Elon wants to charge for Twitter because it
I'll be
would
the
make
first guy to pay.
it would make it expensive to do operations like that, right?
That $1 thing was smart because he's like, how else are we going to stop bots? He's like, it costs $1 to start an account because then you stop people from starting 1,000 in a day. It's no longer just inexpensive. You actually need some sort of organization behind it. So anyway,
makes sense. Well, let's get onto the next story for today. So for the next story for today, for headline number 4. So for headline number 4, we have Ontario Transit Service wants inspectors to fine 6,000 train riders a month for fare evasion. This is based on a CBC article. And in this article, it reports that the agency says policy is applied fairly to all riders and employees will receive anti-bias training. Metrolinx, an Ontario government agency that oversees public transport in the southern part of the province, is now setting targets for the number of fines that inspectors collectively issue on GO train riders each month for not paying their fares. CBC News obtained internal records that showed the breakdown of the target of the number of inspections and notice of violations the agency wants customer protection officers and revenue protection officers to handle, and how many were actually handled and issued on each of its 8 regional trains. Notice of violations are fines issued. notice of violations are fines issued by Go Transit to passengers who fail to provide proof of payment when requested. In October 2022, Metrolix implemented a graduated fee structure for those fines. So for the first-time offenders, they're now fined $35. Second time, receive a $50 ticket. And anyone with 3 offenses receives a $100 fine. And the transit agency introduced a monthly target for the fines in September of 2023. According to an employee who was not authorized to speak on the matter, and while internal reports were use the word target, they use it loosely. The Metrolix employee described the figure as more of a quota rather than a target. So, Jonathan, what are your thoughts on this situation going on with Go Transit?
Well, this is kind of interesting, right? So anytime you look at any sort of authority or any organization with authority and they're setting quotas, that can be a very dangerous space, right? Because you get into a lot of ethical issues and standards there, right? So you'll notice, like at the end of the month, the cops are pulling over more people because they got to hit their quotas. They say that they don't have them. So we got hit the other day, and you know, it was my wife was in the car. She got a speeding ticket. The new insurance document wasn't in the car. It was at home on the table, so she got hit for that. And I don't register our license plates because I think it's stupid. So she got hit for everything. I was like, whatever.
Oh my gosh.
Part of it was my fault. Part of it was my fault. But the thing is, it was at the end of the month. And then if you start looking around, you're like, oh, because I know where a lot of these cops park themselves.
Yeah.
You look in that last week of the month, that's when they're all out, bro.
Oh,
They have these quotas. And look, don't get me wrong. Meg was speeding. The insurance is on the kitchen table. I didn't register the plates. Now, they're registered, but you know you have to update them. It's like free.
Yeah, you technically have to update it, but you don't have to pay.
Yeah. So don't get me wrong.
But it's like, why are we still doing that?
I'm super comfortable and happy to say, like, totally got the fines we deserve. No big deal.
Yeah.
But when you get into these situations, when you have quotas, people start pulling them over. Cops will start pulling people over for different reasons and trying to find ways or reasons to make up their monthly numbers. It can get to a point that now you start looking at profiling because now you're going to go, well, statistically speaking, these are the people that end up that have more infractions. So I'm going to pull over more. So you see how this can get pretty dicey when you set quotas.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, when it comes to paying your fare on the train, I actually agree with these quotas. Here's why. It's a binary decision. It's a 1 or a 0. If you did not pay to be on the train, you deserve a ticket. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. That's it. It's just one or the other.
No, facts.
And the thing is, people are complaining, be like, oh, they're going to target marginalized groups, and I'm going to feel this way, and oh, because I believe in this, and like, I'm triggered, and I'm indigenous, and bro, just pay the fucking fare. Because here's the thing. They said they're going to talk to everyone. They're going to go, sir, can I see your ticket? The way it used to be. That's how it always, you had a train conductor, sir, let me punch your ticket. Let me see your ticket. This is how it works. So we're just going back to the old system. They tried to do everything digitally. Society fucked them up. These people lost $15 million in rider fares last year. $15 million.
Yeah.
So I get why they're out there raising some shit right now. Look, it's a binary decision, like I said. If you ask everybody, there's no targeting. You don't have to do any specific training. Just know how to ask people if they paid their fare. You can speak basic English, you can do the job. You're fine. And you either did or you didn't pay it. That's it. So maybe people should just kind of shut the fuck up and pay their fare.
Yeah, I definitely would say so. I'm not gonna go to the lengths of saying, oh yeah, they're gonna target racially marginalized people. I think it's just more of like a look thing in terms of like how you're dressed. And the reason why I'll say this is, like, for example, before the quotas started going in, right? I frequent the GO train from time to time. When I've never gotten pulled over or asked for a ticket or anything like that, but I've seen other people, it happen to them, right? But guess what? I'm looking like I'm doing work, or I'm in dress clothes, or the people beside me, they'll look like they're coming from downtown Toronto just in their suits and stuff like that. So I think just subconsciously, because bias is a normal thing in society. You know what I mean? We all have bias. As much as people try to say, oh, no, I'm not particularly biased. We all have a certain bias. That doesn't mean you're an evil person.
No,
you know what I mean?
No. You have a defense mechanism built in for survival. So you assess every single thing that comes into your line of sight or that you hear, because you want to know, like, it's just baked into being a human.
Exactly.
You just want to understand your situation. I get that.
Yeah. And just to continue the point there, like, before they would just do that, like, let's say if someone like looks kind of like, shady looking
Sure.
or shaggy, then maybe they would ask that person for, oh, did you pay or something like that? And that was the situation before versus now. I completely agree with it going back to the old days. Like, there's tons of like LRT services and stuff like that where they do that all the time. And it's not a discriminatory thing.
No.
It's just like, hey, did you pay? All right, let's check. Tap your thing or show your physical transfer, stuff like that. And I just think it's just that people, we just live in a victim society, and everyone wants to say, "Oh, they only did it because X, because I'm black."
They did it because you didn't pay your fare.
Just pay your. If you paid your fare,
then you have nothing to worry about. And
that's it.
that's what I'm saying. Those are the people that are yelling about this, right? It's either you have some,
because they're not paying.
No, exactly. You either have some stupid ass virtue signaling person, probably some, honestly, like, I hate to say it, but some like white Karen who's like trying to virtue signal to be on the right side of things, standing up for all the people that are oppressed, saying, oh, they shouldn't have to worry about this and blah blah. It's like, otherwise it's people that don't pay. Just pay your fare.
Just pay, and you have nothing to worry about.
Exactly.
If you're a law-abiding citizen, guess what? No one's gonna bother you.
Yeah, dude, it's just so simple. For me, I think this one, like I said, it's super straightforward. There's no real wiggle room here.
Yeah.
If you check everybody, that's the best way to do it. You either did or you didn't. Just pay your fare.
But we're gonna move on to the next topic. So with that, let's move on to the next story. For headline number 5, we have reservist pleads guilty on 2 charges related to vaccine mandate criticism. This is from a CBC article, and in this article it says, warrant officer James Topp is facing court-martial over his statements on social media. A Canadian soldier has pleaded guilty to 2 counts of conduct to prejudice of good order and discipline in relation to videos posted on social media that criticize vaccine requirements for military personnel. Warrant Officer James Topp, who faces a maximum punishment of dismissal with disgrace, told at the start of his court-martial appearance in New Westminster, BC, that he's making his guilty pleas voluntarily. The Armed Forces reservist from Vancouver had faced 6 charges under the National Defense Act over the videos he posted in February last year, which he criticized the COVID-19 vaccine requirements for military personnel and federal employees. So, Jonathan, what are your thoughts on this situation going on with Mr. James Topp?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I think James Topp's a Canadian hero.
Facts.
It's what he is. He stood up against the machine. This guy openly admitted in court, he's like, I was going to commit suicide. That's how isolated I felt, even within the military.
Wow.
That's where I felt because this was being pushed so hard on me. And he goes, they brought it hastily to market. It did not seem safe, and I did not feel comfortable taking it. And then I was ostracized. He goes, I legitimately considered suicide, and this is where I landed. I landed on he started a march in Vancouver in February and finished, I believe, in Ottawa sometime in late June. So this man, and he said, he goes, I'm marching for people that lost their jobs because they didn't take the vaccine. I'm marching for people that had to take it that felt coerced. And I'm marching for people, just to push back against the government for applying these insane fucking policies. Yeah. And here's the thing. In hindsight, when you look back at it, you're like, sounds like he marched for a good reason. Now what we know about the COVID vaccines, how ineffective all these mandates were, and how the government handled the entire situation. So honestly, the guy's a hero and he should not be put in this situation. Now, one thing I do want to clarify for a lot of people, he got court-martialed, right? So getting court-martialed is different than going to regular court. You just have to abide by a different set of rules. And that's why he's in this position right now. Because if this were a regular citizen, or if he had just not worn his military garb, he wouldn't be in this situation. It's because that's why.
That's a little why.
That's why, yeah. So they're like, because you wore this, you basically created dissent within the military community. And you used your outfit to sort of, they said to prop yourself up or to use this as a megaphone or blah, blah, blah. He didn't. He did it because he did it to prove a point, and I agree with this point. And I'm 100% on this guy's side. Yeah. It was interesting. Pierre Poilievre actually joined him on his last day of his march for a couple kilometers and walked with him. And is like, I agree with what this man is saying. I agree in the freedom to choose. I agree with everything this guy stands for, except he has to now get court-martialed. Now, the nice thing is, the fines the guy's going to face, he's going to get dishonorably discharged. That's it. He's not going to prison. He's not going to get it looks bad for your military career, but if you do it for the right reasons, who cares, man? Because like I said, a lot of people like me are going to be like, bro, you're a Canadian hero. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you did. And then everything you did, you put that on the line for Canada, the way the rest of the world should. They should be supporting their own people and what's right in the world. We just don't do enough of that. One thing that kind of upset me, but I guess it's just sort of a way, the way of how things go is, I forget the guy's name. Major, he was the litigator on the other side. Richards, I think was his name. He actually believes that Topp should be punished much more severely because of dissent. Wow. Yeah, because and for me, that's a bit of a problem. Like, I understand when you're in the military, you follow the rules, you do what you're told. I get that. I do. Now, Topp was a reservist, but at the end of the day, there's got to be a line between right and wrong. And losing bodily autonomy to take an experimental vaccine that has caused harm to a lot of people right now. It has become quite dangerous, and the evidence is all there. And the thing is, this Richards fella, he's able to look back in hindsight and see the damage it's caused if he's got his fucking eyes open, And because of that, I kind of go, how can that guy still have such a firm stance that this man needs to be punished severely for standing up for Canadians and giving them some hope? So, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm glad he did what he did. I'm sorry that he's in this situation, but I'm happy to see that he got court-martialed and had his day in court so he could tell the world what he thought and, stand up for himself.
Yeah, this situation is a lot more important than I think a lot of Canadians even realize of what was going on. It's just, this is literally a Canadian heritage moment of what he pretty much went through, in my opinion. And I'm glad it's gonna come to a somewhat of a good solution. It could be worse at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Like you said, honorable discharge at the end of the day.
It'll be dishonorable. It'll be a dishonorable discharge.
Dishonorable discharge.
Yeah.
In my book, it's an honorable discharge.
Yeah,
if that means anything, you know what I mean? But I get why the military is going to do it. But it's just because they have different rules that apply to them in those scenarios.
For sure.
And I understand some people are going to, by the letter of the law, they're going to hold them to that standard. But in my book, anyone who stands up in those circumstances, 1v1000.
Yeah, let's go.
Man, let's
You're
go.
My hero.
You got
go.
my respect.
Absolutely,
You got my respect totally. So with that being said, let's get into the next headline for today. So for headline number 6, we have Berkshire Hathaway exits their GM and Johnson & Johnson positions. This is from a Yahoo News article, which mentions that Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway has exited positions and sold its stake in several companies like General Motors, Johnson & Johnson, and these companies all underwent or announced new business ventures, while Apple, Bank of America, and American Express continue to stay in Berkshire's top holdings. So Warren Buffett is hoarding more cash. Do you think, does this mean that he sees a bigger drop coming in the economy? What do you think about this, Jonathan?
Yeah, so he actually also dropped stock in Amazon and P&G as well. They're massive companies. He's got the biggest cash stockpile I think he's ever had at around $157 billion, which is wild. And I'll tell you why that's actually even more crazy today is because inflation is rising so fast that every day you hang on to $1, it actually becomes worth less. Right?
Yeah.
Because so your money doesn't grow in the bank, but it becomes worth less because you have to pay more for goods. So for him to pull up and hang on to that much cash, he must really feel like the bottom is going to fall out of the market. Right? That to me identifies that. And when things like this happen, you want to look to guys you can't really emulate his style because he's done so well in such a different way. But you can look at the things that guys that are special in their own categories do, and you can try to be like, okay, what does that mean for the rest of the world, or what does that look like it's going to trigger? He is notoriously known for investing in undervalued companies. That's his shtick. That's what he knows. Even the biggest ones, but he knows when they're low and he knows when it's the right time. I think that the economy in the United States and the rest of the world is in for a really, really bad awakening. I think that they're doing this artificial uptick right now where everything's kind of stable. Maybe we'll drop the interest rates. A couple homes are going up in a certain area. Everything's going to be okay. This is artificial. What it is you drop and then you take a breath and then you dive again. And I'm a little out of my depth at that level of understanding investments like he does, and by a long shot. And I'm okay with admitting that 100%. But what I can do is I can sort of identify the trend here. With him having this much cash, it should be very, very concerning for a lot of people. I think everyone should be maybe not making hasty moves because we don't all have the same means to do those things, but maybe, think twice before you jump right now, because I do think that the bottom is going to fall out of the market, or this guy would not be hoarding so many cash, because he's got it all for the rainiest day that he thinks is obviously coming. Because I bet over the next 12 to 18 months, the large majority of that cash is reinvested. Otherwise, he wouldn't be sitting on the cash. He'd be investing in those stocks that you said he's hanging on to, because he would make more money with them. So he sees something coming. I don't know what it looks like, but I trust his judgment. So I guess we'll just wait and see. But my caveat would be, like I said, think twice before you jump right now.
Oh, yeah. I think, what's funny enough? I saw a report, what's going on. So what you see with the housing market right now, right? More specifically in America, it's still happening here to a degree, but more specifically in America, there's been homes are still yes, the prices are falling to a certain degree, but there's still a lot of sales volumes. But you want to know what's happening in the market right now? Right now, majority of the homes that are being bought are actually being bought with majority cash.
Right.
So it's people who are putting that 50% down, 60% down, maybe all of it down. You know what I mean? And they're just buying a lot of these homes up. And if you look and if you look at there's even a Canadian site that shows you all of this data as well too. It's called House Sigma. If you look at a lot of I would say the mid-tier GTA homes, so anywhere from I wouldn't even call them mid-tier, single family homes, at least 3 bedrooms.
Right.
Right.
So minimum 1.5.
Yeah. Minimum 1.5, 1.2, stuff like that. If you look at those homes are they're still going within 15 days on the market.
Yeah.
5 days on the market.
Sure.
7 days on the market versus the ones, the super high end homes, not even super high end. There's a more upper echelon ones, the 4 bedrooms, the 5 bedrooms, stuff like that.
Sure.
Those are on the market for 3 months, 6 months.
Well, those are a special buyer. To get into something that's going to cost you $5 million up, that's a special buyer group.
Yeah, it's a certain class of Canadians and buyers as well too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's interesting to see how it's developing there. So, but to get back into my point as well, with what Berkshire Hathaway is kind of doing, how I see what they're doing right now is they're actually doing something that's very smart in my opinion. They're staying liquid, right?
Yeah.
And staying liquid, what that allows them to do is you pretty much never know when someone is going to get themselves into trouble. And guess what? If someone gets themselves into trouble, Berkshire Hathaway is going to be there to bail them out.
Yeah.
But guess what? They're going to have to give up that asset, right? So think about it like this. They don't get anyone into trouble. They help people get out of trouble.
Right.
But they're going to help them get out of trouble at a discount.
No, I agree. And I think the reality of what you're saying is very accurate. It's just that when they stockpile $157 billion, they're expecting a lot of people to get in trouble. Because they're not stockpiling 10 bill, it's 157. So they're expecting such probably a broad range of industries to start tanking, and then knowing how to put those pieces together and which companies to invest into. And to your point about the housing, which I think is interesting, I think what you're seeing a lot of with why people are buying them for cash. So the lower end housing market in and around the GTA, they're going super fast, because what's happening is a lot of people, in the boomer generation, they're sold their homes for 1.5 or 2, and they realize the market is so turbulent and so fucked up that they're going and buying something for $800,000 just outside the city and sitting on the rest of their cash, so they're not subject to the market. They're going, hey, look, the house is paid for. It doesn't matter what's going on with interest rates or anything like that, or how crazy this gets. We're good. And that's what's happening. And that's why I think a lot of those you're seeing taking longer at the top end, but still moving very quick on the bottom end. And I think that's the primary reason for it.
That makes a lot of sense. And totally. And considering that right now, consumer debt is a ticking time bomb. If you look into it, I think, so right now, about 43% of Canadians are in heavy credit card debt, with 11% of them being not sure of how they're going to pay it off. And similar thing for America. Actually, in America, it's a little bit worse. 61%, so 3 in 5 over there, are in heavy credit card debt, and 14% are saying that they're not quite sure how they're going to pay it off. So more North Americans are suffering massively in credit card debt, and their balances are getting quite high. So it's going to be an interesting time going forward, especially into 2024, because what's going to happen if there's any more layoffs going on with like rising interest rates, because that's what they're effectively trying to do with the interest rates. By raising interest rates, they're trying to make it more. That's how they're going to try and battle inflation, right?
Of course.
And with money being more, because inflation and interest rates are basically the cost of money, right? With it being more expensive to service money now, a lot of companies are going to have to lay off people because like they're not going to have the same level of income coming in from their businesses. And then on top of that, maybe they might have like a commercial loan that is coming up, and you know they owe a certain percentage on it, and they're going to have
like
to
the
cut
CEBA
back as
loans
well.
that everybody took through the pandemic that are going to shut down another 250,000 businesses in Canada.
Woof.
Yeah,
That
it's
one is-
spicy. Yeah, I mean, to your point about sort of consumer debt, that's the biggest problem we have in Canada, is that we're so deeply in debt with consumer debt that if the interest rates continue to rise and we have negative home equity, a lot of Canadians don't have any debt to back into to try to solve their problem. So then you're going to see you're going to see basically the market is going to do something like it did in 2008, where you have kind of like it's almost like a value plus mortgage situation.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same, but it is in a sense where if the value of your home drops so much, but you got a mortgage that's say you have a mortgage for $1 million, but the value drops down to 800,000. Why would you keep the home? You have negative home equity.
Yeah, you're upside down.
Even if you sell it, you can't make so you walk away from it. And then if you've got no debt to back into, a lot of those people are going to walk away as soon as the next quarter point uptick happens in interest. So at scale, I mean, the economy's sort of in the dump. And I think when you're seeing it with stuff like Berkshire Hathaway, it is like this, it daisy chains itself together. You know, we're kind of talking on both ends of the spectrum here, but you don't really have one without the other in a lot of cases. He's stockpiling all this cash because all the way down the steps, the economy's in a bad position.
Oh, yeah. And you know what's another sign of the economy being a bad position? All of these pre-construction homes in the GTA magically catching fire. There's been...
really?
There's tons of fires. And you know how bad it's getting to the point now where now what a lot of builders are doing? They have stopgap houses. So they don't brick every house. They put a stopgap house in the middle of it. And I'll show you guys a clip. We'll play it alongside here as well, so you would have that. They're putting stopgap. They're putting stopgap houses where, like, let's say someone starts a fire on this house.
Yeah.
It's gonna stop in that middle one, and it won't affect the other ones that are built.
Yep.
Because that's how prominent all of these fires are going on. So people are defaulting on their pre-construction homes and all their deposits.
Oh, you think the consumers are burning down the homes from the builders?
Oh, yeah. Allegedly.
Yeah, it sounds like it's happening.
Yeah.
Wow. Wild place, man. Well,
Yeah.
I think that's everything for today, folks. If you haven't already signed up for our newsletter, you can join us at blendernews.com, and you can get the daily news from yours truly. I send it out 6 days a week, and it takes me a long time to put together, but it's why I know so much when we're on the show together. So like and subscribe on YouTube, join us on the newsletter, or just see us again on the next episode. Anything else for you?
No, that's it for me. Have a blessed week, guys, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody.